How a doctor I know personally broke medical protocol and used a dog to save somebody's life. This is a true story. This is actually a doctor that I know personally in my personal life. So how the story goes is, this was actually a couple of months ago this happened. There was a patient, he had a chronic illness. It wasn't a fatal illness, but it was a chronic health condition this man lived with. And the man was in his 50s. Anyway, so this man's chronic condition flared up and he had to be hospitalized, and he was essentially dying. What happened was his body was starting to shut down and he was not looking good, to be honest. Anyway, so the doctor that I know, he is an emergency specialist. So he's an expert in critical care. So what he did was he was able to, through his years of advanced medical training, he was actually able to stabilize this man. And so what was happening was the man was actually starting to make a recovery. So you might hear that and think, okay, well, what's the problem? What's the dog? What's this? There was one major roadblock here. Now, this is a major roadblock because the man decided, while he was being treated, that he didn't want to live anymore. Yes, this man decided, I'm over it. I don't want to do this anymore. Now, in most countries in the world, that word that starts with E, that means a person choosing to exit, I don't know if I can say it due to censorship, I'm not sure about censorship, so I don't want to say the word, but when people choose to medically, exit, that's not necessarily allowed. However, what is allowed is if you have a sound mind, in medicine, you're actually allowed to refuse care. If you just don't want care, you're allowed to refuse care. So what this man did was, he essentially refused to eat because he lost his appetite due to this illness. And so basically the doctors wanted to intubate him. They wanted to put a feeding tube, I don't know if it's called intubating, they wanted to put a feeding tube into his stomach and that would give him nutrients and that would actually recover him. He flat out refused to do the intubation. He was very, very sick, but he was actually recovering, but he flat out to eat physically or to have the intubating tube. So what happened was, this man was actually going to die because he didn't want to eat and he wasn't in a very good shape. Even though the medicine was working, he didn't want to live anymore. He said, I have nothing to live for, and he just didn't want to do it. So what happened was the family members, he had some relatives, they were called in sort of to say goodbye to him. Look, this man's not eating. He's probably not going to last more than, a day, a few days or whatever it was. He wasn't looking very good. So his family members came in to say goodbye to him. They were all, sad about it. And so then the doctor said to them, when this man wasn't, he took the family members sort of away from where the patient was lying, and he said to them, is there anything because they knew what was happening, he was choosing not to eat. He said, is there anything this man has to live for? Does he have anything that would make him change his mind about eating? And the relatives were like, oh, look, to be honest with you, he's had a pretty hard life. He's got a chronic health condition. He's never been married. He doesn't have any children. He doesn't really feel like he has anything to live for, to be honest. It'd be very hard to convince him. And the doctor was like, oh, that's horrible, because if we could just get this guy to eat or put him on a feeding tube, he'll make a full recovery. Anyway, not a recovery in the sense where he'd lose his chronic illness, but he'd recover enough to, functionally be healthy and go home, is what I'm trying to say. Just to make that clear, so I'm explaining this story the right way. I'm not a doctor, so I'm just, can't give it. Anyway, so then the doctor was like, I don't know what to do. This is just, because they can't release this man because he's too sick to be released, but they can't sort of force him to do, have the feeding tube. So they're in a bit of a limbo, I guess. They didn't know what to do, so they just had to treat him and respect his wishes. Anyway, one of the family members, I think it was like the sister or something, said to the doctor, actually, there is one thing that means everything to him in this world, and you can maybe guess what that is. It's his dog. He had one dog. I don't even know what breed this dog was, but he had one dog and he absolutely loved his dog. That was the one thing the family members all agreed on. He doesn't care for anything but his one dog. Pardon me. So the doctor said, oh, a dog? That's incredible. Can you bring the dog here? And the family member was like, oh, I don't think that's possible. We're in a hospital. And the doctor said, don't worry about it. Just bring the dog here. Can you go now and get the dog? And so the person, who I'm pretty sure was the sister, drove to get the dog. I think she had the key and she was feeding it anyway. And so she brought the dog back, went to the car park. The doctor came down, this doctor that was treating him, came all the way down and then got the dog on a leash, brought him up to the hospital where the patient was lying, and then he opened the curtain, because patients have like a curtain around their bed. And he opened the curtain and said to the man, look who's here to see you. And they let the dog off the leash, and the dog just went bounding, like absolute crazy. The dog just jumped on the bed, started wagging his tail, licking the man. The man was like, "Oh, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. I thought I'd never see you again." He was just so emotional. He was crying. He was laughing. It was just, the family members were all moved by it. They were all apparently crying as well. And everyone was just, and the doctor was probably quite moved by it as well. His mood completely changed. He was laughing. He started moving his hands around, and he had all his energy back. And then after a while of this happening, he went, "Oh, well, I better start eating then if I need to go home to take care of you." And he was talking to his dog, "I better start eating again." And so, he started off by eating a small amount, like I don't even know what it was they gave him. He ate a little bit of food. And then a couple of days, he didn't even have the feeding tube. He just ate little bits of food, and his body started to kick back into gear. And then within, I think a couple of days, he was actually ready to go home. Now, I don't know what actually happened to this man. I have no idea. I just know that he made a relative full recovery from the hospitalization, went home, and I don't know what happened to him. But the point is, it's an incredible story, because this doctor, he understood the power of human psychology, and he understood that. How do I say it? So many doctors are obsessed with a medicalization of everything. Oh, well, you got to take this pill and this thing, and you put this tube in here and that. But he understood there was something much more going on with this man. He knew if he could just unlock something in this man would want to eat again and want to live again. And the thing is, I don't know whether this man was chronically had mental illness or anything, but I just know that in that moment, he felt the need to want to eat again just because of his dog. And this also kind of proves my point that I was always saying is, a pet means so much more than you could ever understand. To some people, a pet means everything to them. And a lot of people in life don't really understand this, but they think, "Oh, well, it's just a dog, it's just a cat." But for some people, it's their entire world. And this story proves the point. So I personally think it's an incredible story. I've never heard anything like it. And I know this guy personally, so that's how I know it actually happened. But yeah, I hope somebody enjoyed this story, and thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.